Hello, this is Eastern Europe Review, the joint production of BELSAT TV and TVP World, with reports and analysis from Belarus, Russia and Ukraine. I'm Sergei Pelesa, and these are the stories. Belarusian civil society held a marathon to gather more than €500,000 for political prisoners.
And again, there was a feeling of solidarity, unity, the feeling that we can do great things together.
How do Russian volunteers help the military in aggression against Ukraine?
With God's help we do it, because without God there is no threshold. We think that this prayer will help our guys.
The world's fifth largest monument situated in Ukraine is in the center of a cultural war.
Maybe the Lord has blessed us to turn to our main enemies, our historical enemies.
Belarusians once again demonstrated their solidarity at a special online marathon in support of political prisoners and their families. More than €500,000 were collected. Several thousand people are serving time in Belarusian prisons for their civil position. Moreover, for their support inside the country, you can also go to prison, so the collected amount of money was achieved mainly by Belarusians living abroad.
Belarusians joined a large online marathon of solidarity with political prisoners and collected almost €600,000 to support them and their families. It was a special campaign that united 13 charitable organizations and funds. More than 20 independent media outlets acted as the organizers of the event, broadcasting it for 12 hours on July the 29th.
We as BELSAT had our dedicated 3-hour slot, 3 hours which was hosted directly by our presenters Serhei Patsasony and Nasta Rosetskaya. During that time, BELSAT became a kind of hub receiving signals from all the other newsrooms, and we broadcast them one by one.
In Belarus, those who help political prisoners risk being imprisoned, so only people living outside the country were able to donate money during the online marathon. During the 12-hour broadcast, a new donation appeared every 4 seconds, ranging from a minimum contribution of €5 to several thousand euros. The largest single donation was €10,000.
Nasta and I spent 3 hours in the studio, and the time passed in the blink of an eye. When we started, there were €150,000 in the account. Now there are 226,000.
Journalists volunteered their time on their day off to cover the marathon, and their reports reached a wide audience.
They got about 3 million views on Telegram alone. It seems the topic resonates with people, evoking emotions. And we see it not only in our view count, but also in the amount of money collected.
As a result, donors contributed €574,000 for political prisoners and their families. The supervisory board will decide how to allocate the funds among the 13 human rights initiatives and solidarity funds.
100% of the collected funds will be used to provide direct assistance to political prisoners and their families. Payment of rent, salaries of employees, and other administrative expenses related to the marathon will not be covered.
Human rights organizations present different numbers of officially recognized political prisoners in Belarus. According to Vyasna, there are nearly 1,500 of them, while the Dissidentby initiative estimates closer to 2,000. However, the total number of people convicted for opposing Lukashenko's regime is significantly higher. Supporting them requires a substantial amount of financial assistance.
This is the work of the lawyers representing political prisoners, if they still have lawyers, and the care packages. Depending on the status of a political prisoner, he has either regular parcels to the pretrial detention center or large parcels of 50 kilos per year, and this also needs to be prepared.
Frequently, only breadwinners in families are those who are imprisoned. Therefore, solidarity funds provide assistance to the relatives of political prisoners.
It's a miracle that it was so well organized and carried out at such a high level. And again, there was a feeling of solidarity, unity, the feeling that we can do great things together.
The collection of more than €500,000 testifies to the fact that the issue of political imprisonment remains one of the key concerns in the Belarusian democratic community. However, the online marathon is only a part of this agenda. Donations for political prisoners through various organizations and foundations continue daily.
Ukrainian volunteers have strongly supported their army since the beginning of the war. They supply the soldiers with all they need. It's hard to believe, but Russia also has similar volunteers who support the army. A new campaign of support for the war with Ukraine and patriotic sentiments has been launched in Russian regions. Civilians in Russia who are far from the front and from the army want to be a part of the war. Let us take a look at how militarism is flourishing in the Russian rear.
This is Saratov, a city with almost 1 million inhabitants located in the southeast of the European part of Russia. In the basement of a residential building, pensioners have independently organized a workshop for weaving camouflage nets for the Russian army. Before they begin their work, an Orthodox prayer is obligatory. The women believe they are engaged in a God-pleasing endeavor.
With God's help we do it, because without God there is no threshold. We think that this prayer will help our guys, and God helps us in general to stand here, gives us strength.
It is indeed not easy to stand for a whole day. In the stuffy basement, people spend the whole day with only 1/2 hour break for tea. They are involved in the activity because they are concerned about the Russian military, which is waging an aggressive war against Ukraine. These women genuinely believe that this army is strong, and they treat Russian soldiers as their sons. However, they seem unaware that they may be inadvertently giving away a secret in this interview. The fact is that the Russian troops lack even the most basic things.
To be honest, it seems to me that the guys won't tell anyone from the weavers that the network there is bad or something. They probably lack it badly and they always just say, "Thank you very much."
In Khabarovsk, people went even further and organized a masterclass on weaving camouflage nets for all who were interested. This event was held publicly at one of the city's festivals, along with courses on rolling overcoats, winding leg wrappings, assembling and disassembling weapons.
For the defense of the motherland from enemies and so on.
Children are enthusiastically trying on military equipment, while adults are watching people in camouflage playing make-believe war.
This is our task, because if we don't do it, who will do it? At one time they cancelled the basic military training lessons in schools, and we sat out a lot.
Here, organizers don't say that war is blood, suffering and death, but they are assuring people that it is honorable and patriotic to voluntarily put weapons in their hands or help those who have invaded a neighboring country.
Now we have very bad patriotism. Even those who grew up in the Soviet era, we are a bit out of shape. The sense of pride is a little bit gone sometimes.
The women weaving nets in Saratov don't complain about the lack of patriotism, only about the lack of money. They used to meet here every day, but now they meet just twice a week. A local businessman who gave money to buy materials has cut back on funding. The war unleashed by Vladimir Putin has also hit his provincial business.
One of the tallest monuments in Europe has become a subject of criticism and controversy in Ukraine. In Kyiv, the Soviet Union's coat of arms was removed from the Ukrainian Model Monument, a symbol of the Soviet victory in World War II. Instead of the hammer and sickle, authorities are planning to install the Ukrainian trident on the shield. On the other hand, in the Russian State Duma, there have been proposals to strike at the monument.
We meet engineer Alexander Dilgach in Kyiv near the Museum of Ukraine's History in World War II. Alexander was involved in the construction of the Motherland Monument, the fifth tallest statue in the world, towering over 100 meters and situated within the museum's premises.
This is the last remaining memorial of the Soviet Union that depicts the final victory over the Nazi invaders.
The sculptor Yevgen Vuchetich, the first author of the monument project scheduled for opening in 1980, died suddenly. Alexander Dilgach recalls that despite the wide publicity, Vuchetich's idea received little response at that time.
It made a repulsive impression on me, because it was mounted on a pedestal made up of piles of naked bodies.
Vasyl Borodai led the work on the monument, and architects Viktor Yelizarov and Mykolai Feshchenko joined his team. Alexander Dilgach was responsible for engineering solutions.
There were no trees here, as the slope was wild and untidy, but according to the river survey, if you look from the left bank, there was no better location than this one. There was also a criterion that this was where the first aerial bomb hit.
The hill consists of unstable soils. To reinforce the slope, Alexander Dilgach devised a system involving board piles and cables. The piles were inserted into the slope and the cables were threaded through them, forming a 36-meter diameter ring that was pulled upwards.
A so-called coffer was constructed on this circle. Imagine it as a tin can with no base pressed into the ground.
The ropes were fixed to the walls of the coffer using jacks, and each of them could withstand up to 200 tons. This pressure enabled anchoring the construction to the ground. Inside the coffer, excavators and bulldozers worked in tandem, digging the soil. On Bankova Street, where the office of the president is located, in the 1980s there used to be the building of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine. They insisted that motherland looked in their direction, but later it turned out that standing with its back to the Dnipro River, the statue was at risk of collapsing since the monument couldn't endure the force of the wind. As a result, the sculpture is facing the left bank, and symbolically the Kremlin.
Maybe the Lord has blessed us to turn to our main enemies, our historical enemies, especially because once every 500 years, evil comes from that direction. Another 500 years have passed, and now we're dealing with it again.
The engineer recalls that there were disputes of the material for the monument. The Communist Party leadership wanted to cover the monument in golden leaf. To get approval, Alexander Dilgach, along with architect Mykolai Feshchenko, had to present a scaled-down copy of the monument measuring 1.5 meters in height. As a result, the idea, humorously referred to as the Golden Samovar by the engineer, was not successful. Instead, the Motherland Monument was constructed using welded stainless steel. The co-author of the monument holds his own opinion regarding the replacement of the Soviet Union emblem with the Ukrainian trident.
If your grandmother, for example, says that the Soviet Union was a great thing, you're not going to tear the great thing away from her so that she can start saying it was a bad thing. And why do you have to take the coat of arms off and pay crazy money for it?
The Ukrainian authorities have spent $700,000 to replace the Soviet Union's coat of arms with a trident. In addition, they have decided to rename the monument to the Mother Ukraine instead of Motherland Monument, thus making it a symbol of Ukrainian independence. The monument is set to reopen on August the 24th, the country's Independence Day. After the drone attack on Moscow City, one of the capital's symbols, the Russian State Duma suggested targeting the motherland, the symbol of Ukraine, in response.
These are all our stories for you today. Thank you for watching Eastern Europe Review. Please continue to stay with TVP World and stand with Ukraine.